Um, Something's happening today. I haven't watched it. Right. Before we start, it's 44 minutes. I have no idea what it's about other than I've watched a little bit, something about some Sri Lankan man who came in 2011 to New Zealand. That was the RNA radio, and then it clipped to this man standing in front of the Ovid 1 o'clock update wall. But this is not about Ovid, this is about something else. I believe now it's Father's Day. 5th of September is Father's Day. I'll just recap that Beautiful, which is the third cornerstone, opened her eyes first, and it's the 13th, Rebellion. And that I've just been posting about the confirmation of 13 and 17, which is sorrow. And that the Antichrist will throw us all under the bus. But just a quick testimony before we start this. Why I'm interested in this is because the Elnor Mosque event, kick-off event, is to do with G hard. Now, I'm just a wee old lady who's up the mountain because the Lord called me up here. But in 2001 was when the Twin Towers went down. I was training as a teacher. That was my first year training. The following year I completed. My husband cast me out as soon as I qualified as a teacher. The next day he said, I want to separate, right? So that was 2002. 2003, just after Christmas, I got a job as a teacher at Riccarton Primary. I broke all the rules and I evangelised. I got to know an Egyptian lady. I went to her house. I saw that, well, she shared her faith, I shared mine. We became friends. I taught her son. She said that she would strap a BOMB and walk into a Jewish synagogue happily, and she would love to be called to do it and blow herself up and away like a balloon, and everyone else around her. And her husband was an engineer. He couldn't get a job, was working in a factory. My husband was an engineer. He said, we were still talking in the first year. He said, let me see his CV. I gave him his CV. Then my husband walked in when he was passing the kids back to me. We had 50-50 care, and he threw the CV on my lap, and I remember it distinctly. And he said, no wonder he hasn't got a job. There's a 7-year gap in his CV. Looks suspicious. So that night or the night after, I had a dream, and I saw my friend, the Egyptian lady, and she was in a war-torn apartment building, sort of on the scaffolding on the outside apartment doors, walkways. She came around the corner and she saw her husband, who I had met, who had a machine gun, blow, blow, blow away. Machine gun, blow, blow, blow away. I'm sorry, I'm just trying to code this. I don't know how to do it. And I knew that. I was like I could hear her. I knew her thoughts, and it was that she was in love with him. And even though she was aware of what he was, she still went ahead, and she has this family of 2 boys. She's living in Christchurch, and I happen to be teaching her son. So I had this dream where I see her partner, her husband, with this machine in his hand. So I asked her to go for a coffee. So I knew about the 7-year gap in the CV, and I knew about the dream. Didn't tell her I had a dream. I just said to her, have you ever seen your husband with a machine shoot him up thing? And she lied and said no. And then I said, well, Joseph told me that your CV, your husband's CV has the 7-year gap. She said, oh, I didn't want to say anything about it because we thought it looked suspicious when we come into the country, because we actually, over that time, he worked with Ben Laden, and we lived on his estate. Now, you know that Ben had a engineering company, and that was like a ruse behind the actual real meaning for his existence and his what do you call it, recruitment. And it was like cells of a body that were sent out throughout the world at that time. We know that. They're all over the place, ready, sleeping. So she told me that she worked for him, he worked for him, and that they lived in a mansion, and that she and her family, her husband, loved him, were very grieved about his hearing of his death. And we know who was taking credit for that, and now Biden tries to take credit for it, but they're the same horses. They're the same. Bam Bam and Biden. That Bam Bam took credit for it. You see him in his interview for his book, The Promised Land, where he said, because I don't know the news, I don't follow the news, I've never been political, but the Lord has made sure I know the important parts, and Bam Bam said about, in that interview with Kimmel maybe, that he was responsible for taking that man down, at the same time as he answered the question about how he stood in front of Anunnaki, the hieroglyph, and that somebody had said, hey, you look just like him. He laughed about that. And then the two of them laughed about the toilet paper and how many pages in his book, The Promised Land. And there's a number of pages that they keep trying to muddle up, but I know the number, and I looked it up in Strong's, and I've uploaded it. Used all the toilet paper, which is basically, as soon as you say who used the toilet paper, you think of Ovid, do you not? Of course you do, because that was the first thing that people did, stock up on toilet paper. And The Promised Land, the book, used up all the toilet paper. Ha ha ha, very funny joke, turned up. Thank you, Lord. And he also mentioned the aliens. Oh, well, that's something he wouldn't say, isn't it? When he first came in to become privy to all the information, he wouldn't say. So that's all in the interview. So that's how come I know all this. So very suspicious that this lady lived in a mansion with her family and her husband on Laden's estate for 7 years, and they left it out of their CV. So I know for a fact that they moved to Invercargill. So I'm always interested in this T cell sleeper, right? So let's listen to this. I don't know how much I have to listen to.
Nearby resident Brendan O'Shaughnessy says it's unfortunate the police have to protect the community from people like that, but it seems as though they did everything they could. A Sri Lankan community group says the terrorists' actions have nothing to do with his homeland and everything to do with Islamic State radicalization. The attacker, 32-year-old Ahmed Atil Mohammed Samsudeen, came to this country from Sri Lanka on a student visa in 2011 and was granted refugee status in 2018. A spokesperson for the United Sri Lanka Association
Kia ora, ngā mihi nui kia koutou katoa. Good afternoon, everybody, and a happy Father's Day to all dads, stepdads, and others who play that role out there. I also want to acknowledge that today can be a difficult day for people who've lost their father, and I want to acknowledge that at the outset as well. And if you can indulge me just one more wish of congratulations. Today's a special day for two other people. It's their birthday. One of those people is my mother, so happy birthday, Mum. And the other is Minister Hipkins, and so we also wish him a restful birthday as well. I'll shortly hand over to Dr. Bloomfield to update on the latest case numbers, but first I wanted to pay a tribute to our essential workers. Coming up to the end of our third week of alert level restrictions, I know a certain fatigue can kick in. But through all of this, up and down the country, a group of New Zealanders have been going to work each day to ensure we have food to eat, that our vulnerable are supported, and of course that our health system keeps going. Despite lockdown, our hospital and other health providers have to keep going, and in fact have added record testing and vaccination volumes to their already busy workload. That's why we are all the more grateful for the essential workers who responded to the terrorist attack on Friday. Paramedics from St John's who were first on the scene and provided critical emergency care.
Oi.
Doctors and nurses across Auckland and Middlemore hospitals already stretched with COVID patients who undertook emergency surgery on victims. I also want to acknowledge the countdown workers and supermarket workers across the country who are operating under a lot of pressure. Next time that you're in the supermarket, please be kind and say thank you to those who are serving you. And finally, I want to acknowledge the work of the police and the New Zealand Security Intelligence Service. The actions of the police surveillance and special tactics groups have been well canvassed, but the SIS have also played a key role in identifying and investigating this terrorist. Often the SIS can't talk about its operational work for security reasons, but in this case it is possible to disclose its role in conducting a long-standing counter-terrorism investigation into the deceased attacker from its outset to its conclusion. The New Zealand SIS's powers are complementary to those of the police, and while we can't disclose the exact nature of their role, they have played an important and valuable role, committing significant resources over a long period of time to help New Zealanders stay safe. I'll now pass over to Dr. Bloomfield.
Thank you, Deputy Prime Minister. Kia ora koutou katoa. So today there are 20 new community cases to report. All are in the Auckland region. It takes
Police and the New Zealand Security Intelligence
Listen to what he
Service.
says.
The actions of the police surveillance and special tactics
He
groups
calls
have
him the
been
Prime
well
Minister.
canvassed, but the SIS have also played a key role in identifying and investigating this terrorist. Often the SIS can't talk about its operational work for security reasons, but in this case it is possible to disclose its role in conducting a long-standing counter-terrorism investigation into the deceased attacker from its outset to its conclusion. The New Zealand SIS's powers are complementary to those of the police, and while we can't disclose the exact nature of their role, they have played an important and valuable role, committing significant resources over a long period of time to help New Zealanders stay safe. I'll now pass over to Dr.
Listen to this.
Thank you, Deputy Prime Minister. Kia ora koutou katoa.
Deputy Prime
So
Minister.
today there are 20 new community cases to report. All are in the Auckland region.
Right.
It takes our total number of cases associated with the current outbreak to
Okay.
801. Of those, 79 cases are now deemed to have recovered, so our total number.
So I'm not following the news, right? So now I'm just going to Google. See, the last thing I Googled was... Right. I don't know any more than that. Terrorist attack. New Zealand. Friday. We'll see if it comes up. I don't know which one. 6 stabbed New Zealand supermarket attack in Auckland. New York Times. ISIS supported shot dead 2 days ago in New Zealand. Auckland, New Lynn. Extremist shot dead. New Zealand authorities say Islamic terrorist is in the Sun. breaking news 2 days ago. It's hard to know what to put on.
Breaking news coming out of New Zealand, where police have shot dead a man after he stabbed 6 people at a supermarket. The government's calling it an ISIL-inspired attack. Authorities say the attacker was a Sri Lankan national who'd been in the country since 2011 and was on a security watch list. Video posted online showed panicked shoppers fleeing the scene at a shopping mall in the city of Auckland. 3 of the injured are in a critical condition.
What happened today was despicable. It was hateful. It was wrong. It was carried out by an individual, not a faith, not a culture, not an ethnicity, but an individual person who was gripped by ideology that is not supported here by anyone or any community. He alone carries the responsibility for these acts. Let that be where the judgment falls.
Jordan Rudd is a journalist with television.
Ironic, isn't it? Where did the judgment fall when it was in the reverse? On everyone else. Can you see it?
New Zealand joins me now from the scene in Auckland. Slight delay on the line because of the satellite link. But Jordan, good to have you with us on the programme. Still a heavy police presence at the scene of the attack, so the investigation continues.
Good evening, that's right. At 7 p.m. here in New Zealand, and emergency services were called here just after 2:30, and as you mentioned, there's still a heavy police presence at this Countdown supermarket in West Auckland, one of New Zealand's largest city. To my left and to my right, this is a main street we're on, and both ends are cordoned off with police lights flashing, and as you can probably see behind me, there are police carrying out investigations as to what happened today, and it was chaotic scenes. When we got here shortly after 2:30, there were people running, there were cars whizzing around the streets, and people didn't know what was going on, and most notably the sound of sirens echoing out around the region. There was confusion too. People didn't know what was going on. They were asking me, do you know what's happening? They were taking videos and they didn't actually know what they were recording. That was until cars started filing out of this main car park here, and the people in those cars started sharing their stories as to the shocking scene they had just witnessed. Now tonight there are 6 people across 3 Auckland hospitals. 3 of those are in a critical condition, the other 3 moderate. So as you can see, police are remaining here and probably will be very late into the night to try and piece together exactly what's happened.
Indeed, the Prime Minister has already made a statement in front of sort of national television. The authorities seem very clear on their actions, but there are still many questions that remain unanswered.
That's right. The Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern, came out very strong, saying this terrorist, quote, is an ISIS sympathiser. He was a known threat and has been since 2016, which is the reason why up until now he's been under constant surveillance. He was considered a threat to public safety after twice buying large hunting knives and possessing Islamic State videos. He'd only recently been released from prison and, like I said, was under that constant surveillance. Now, Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern told the media, she was quite strong on this one, that the attack was carried out by an individual, not a faith, not a culture, not an ethnicity, but an individual person gripped by an ideology that is not supported here by anyone.
Jordan.
Back here, all Countdown and pharmacy staff who were locked down in this mall have come out, which was good to see, all looking visibly shaken, but now investigations continue.
Jordan Rudd from Television New Zealand, thanks very much for joining us from Auckland.
Two hours ago. They won't let me watch it. New Zealand State official 29 years deport terrorist prior to Auckland attack. So this is the 5th today. New Zealand tried for years to deport the who stabbed shoppers in Auckland, the country's, yeah, right. 32. Yeah. Neither his name nor the fact that he was a refugee could be reported until the suppression order by a New Zealand judge was lifted late on Saturday night. The identity of refugees and their immigration status are automatically protected. There's some protection for someone. Officials had tried to justify detaining in jail resolve, but were no legal grounds for doing so. Instead, 30 officers watched him round the clock for more than 50 days before he grabbed her in the supermarket, and shoppers meters away from undercover police surveilling him. Oh my goodness. 7 people were hurt. 5 of them with wounds. 3 of those injured were in critical. Attack rattled New Zealand. Well, this one here didn't know about it. But there's a reason why I'm finding out about it today on the 5th of September. And it's mentioning the link that the Lord will be making, no doubt, to the kick-off event. Friday is not experienced an Islamic State-inspired act of terror, with the nation's grief echoing the aftermath of what happened in Christchurch. Friday's attack provoked fresh debate about the proposed law change currently before Parliament that would make the act of planning it should have always been it. Okay. He was 22. Yeah, very good. He's released on bail. He has this article twice. They're going to use this to spice up the law, but you know who it's going to be for, don't you? Not for the real perpetrators. See? It's going to spice up the law, isn't it? Because you know that what qualifies as a terror my wrist watch now, don't you? So that story that I shared before this, that's a fraudulent document, isn't it, when you come into the country and lie? Well, that's what that couple did. You know that. The one that I talked about, the CV. So we're paying money in the court system for them. So that's a problem. Every legal avenue has been tried. So now they can bring about, push through something that's not going to be for these individuals. It's going to be for another group. Well, rehabilitation's been proven not to work. It's about faith. It's not about an individual. Put me in jail, try and rehabilitate me and change my faith. It won't work. Same with them. Well, that's what they're going to try to do for us. Because that's what we're called. That's what anyone with faith is called. It's like a shotgun, isn't it? You see where this is going. It's basically what a camp would be, rehabilitation. See, they're counting on 13 rebellion so they can throw you in these places for rehabilitation. That's what all this whole facade, all this lunacy is about, stirring you up. Now we're being told that our natural immunity is better than the V. Is that not going to browse people up or not? He said that this man did not fit the profile of a young radicalised ideologies and did not have a political agenda. These are advocates. Mental health. Crazy. They're crazy. Wow. It's all about sympathy, isn't it? Once again. Do you think anyone talked about the Al Noor kick-off event's mental health and was sympathetic towards him? Nah. So nothing out of the ordinary, left to get groceries. .60 to 90 seconds into the attack. Suddenly, he was highly paranoid. Accused members of the public for telling. Well, he'd been tailed by the police, so he had a reason for being paranoid. You're reading, aren't you guys? What? She said after a hastily convened hearing, hours after the attack, Ardern said she would not speak the terrorist's name. It's all in the name, isn't it? Well, I don't know where this is going. I don't know. It's not even the top news. So that's the one we've seen. Okay, guys, so anyway, just shared my testimony. We'll see where it goes. Bless.